Welcome to AI for You. Today's use case focuses on using AI for strategic gap analysis and assumption testing before major initiatives. Many higher ed professionals develop plans, strategies, or solutions in isolation, missing critical perspectives that could strengthen their approach or reveal potential blind spots. You need to create a structured process for testing your strategic thinking using AI as a devil's advocate and thought partner. When developing a new program, marketing campaign, policy change, or institutional initiative, use AI to systematically challenge your assumptions. Using the prompt in today's show notes, present your scenario and current thinking to the AI tool, then specifically ask it to identify what you might be missing, what alternative perspectives exist, and where your assumptions might be flawed. Don't ask for validation, ask for critical analysis. In this episode, we explore the transformational nature of AI with Mark Lee, Director of Web User Experience and Digital Strategy from Colorado College. Mark shares his unique perspective on using AI as a thought partner rather than just a content creation tool, and why AI isn't simply another addition to our tech stack. It is fundamentally changing the system we operate within. Let's jump right in. Welcome to AI for You. I'm Brian Piper, an AI and content marketing consultant, helping higher education institutions become more effective and efficient. This show explores practical, actionable ways that higher education professionals can integrate AI into their workflows to solve real problems and create more meaningful human connections. Each episode delivers a specific use case you can implement today, followed by an in-depth conversation with experts who are successfully leveraging AI in admissions, marketing, advancement, and across a campus. You'll walk away with concrete strategies, tools, and inspiration to make AI work for you and your institution. Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for the invite.
So tell me a little bit about how you're integrating AI into your work at Colorado College.
So at CC, or Colorado College, I work in the communications and marketing office. Despite working in marketing, I'm much more of a technologist by trade. So I sort of started out as a web developer. I have much more of a sort of technology focus in that space. I do use generative AI almost daily, but not really so much for content production. I tend to use it more as a coworker. I found that AI, when used really carefully, can be a valuable thought partner in thinking through strategy, doing some technical troubleshooting, learning new concepts, those types of things where I'm not so much asking AI like to create something for me, but I'm asking it to help me think through and understand things. For example, I might prompt it like, here's the scenario that I'm looking at right now. Here's what I know about it so far. What am I missing here? What are some other possibilities that I might want to be thinking about? And then I guess the exception to that idea of not really having AI write things for me would be one of the things that I found most useful recently is using AI as a coding assistant. So in that case, I am having it actually produce content for me, content that I end up like reviewing and working with and massaging a little bit.
It's so good at things like gap analysis and playing the devil's advocate and looking at what you're doing, as long as you prompt it in the right way and tell it to like be critical about, what you're looking at and what your plans are. It really is a fantastic resource. And I also started off as a web developer, not a super talented one, but just kind of having an understanding of, how the code works and how the structures work within the code. Makes it much easier to, now I'm a developer again. So, yeah.
That's a really great point, Brian, that you do have to watch out for. Earlier this year, there was that issue with I think what people were calling like sycophancy or ChatGPT maybe being a little bit too agreeable, a little bit too amenable to agreeing with everything that you put in front of it. And like you said, I think with careful prompting to check your assumptions and to push back, it'll do that.
Yeah, and I think even using the right tool sometimes, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Like sometimes, Notebook LM will give you a much less creative, but much less opportunity for, hallucinations with certain prompts. So always good there.
Yeah.
What was your AI journey like? Were you an early adopter? Were you like hesitant to get into it?
I would say that I was an early adopter, and I tend to be an early adopter. But for some reason, I always feel like I'm late to the game. And I think that that's, maybe typical for people now who maybe feel like they're late starting with AI. I guess for about a decade, really before the current AI explosion, two of my hobbies were making electronic music. So think like Ableton Live, synths, sort of ambient post-rock style music. And then the other thing that I was really into was making algorithmic digital art. And that's the sort of digital art where you actually write code and the code ends up producing the visual output. Both of those sort of related to a lifelong fascination that I've had with technology. Around 2018 or 2019, I really became interested in how machine learning could be applied to music creation. And specifically, I ran across this Google Brain project called Magenta. And Magenta would look at an existing music composition and it would extend it using AI. Almost kind of like in Photoshop, they have the generative expand where it can take an image and produce things around the edges that didn't exist in the original image. So think that with like a piece of music. I guess around mid 2022, I started exploring what the possibilities were of image generation with AI. And when I look back at it now, I guess that was my first entry point to OpenAI. I started working with OpenAI technology back in mid 2022. This is before ChatGPT had launched. And I started using ChatGPT. So I sort of was on their mailing list, already had an account. And when ChatGPT first came out, I used it pretty immediately. I sort of thought, this is pretty interesting technology, but how useful is it really? How much value is there really in having a chatbot that can like write you a haiku or can make up a story about, whatever topic you give it? Is that really useful? But the more I used it and the more other people used it, I really became hooked. I started seeing a lot more potential. And then when GPT-4 came out a few months later, that's when I really knew that we were in for a world-changing ride. I think that was probably March of 2023, I want to say. And what it reminded me of, and what I think it still reminds me of, is the early days of the web back in like sort of the mid to late 90s, sort of when I first started becoming exposed to the web, in the sense that it was very exciting and very new. And I thought it had incredible promise if it was used for good. My hesitation around AI and the web sort of in retrospect is after seeing what happened with the web and then later seeing what happened with social media, which I think really can be viewed as an evolution having evolved out of the web, is that just because a technology has huge upside, it doesn't mean that it won't also be used for ways that don't necessarily improve the lot of humanity.
You would think that we would have learned.
Right. At first, it was great because it was like you can connect with everyone that you went to high school with, everyone that you went to college with. And there really is a lot of upside, but then like it sort of outpaced, I think, our ethical frameworks that we needed to put in place. And it, has led to disinformation and misinformation, mental health impact, loss of privacy. And I feel like we're sort of still in a reactive mode trying to figure it all out. And so I think that this is a great opportunity to kind of apply that hindsight and look at like, how did that play out and what do we need to be doing now in figuring out the capabilities, the limitations, and the potential drawbacks and potential downsides or externalities with AI, rather than just sort of taking a wait and see approach.
I think that's one of the challenges that higher ed faces particularly is trying to figure out what is the balance between, responsible and ethical and safe, from a data privacy standpoint, use of this technology. And, how can we integrate it into not only teaching and learning, but the running of institutions? Where do you see the biggest challenges for higher ed institutions when you start talking about integrating AI?
Higher ed institutions are really made up of human beings. It's a collection of human beings. And I think that the humans involved there, in some cases, have a lot of fear and anxiety. I think that there's fear of change. I think that there's fear of backlash. I think that there's fear of losing something that's essential to higher education. While higher education is about teaching people how to think and how to learn, there's this idea out there that the AI somehow obviates the need for humans to think and to learn. And I think it can, to a degree, sort of reduce the need to think and learn in certain contexts about certain types of things. But I also think that AI can really be used to help us think and learn. And I think that those are the use cases that we can focus on, using this technology to do what we do better. We want to be mindful of the potential bad, but we also want to look for where it really can help us with the core things that we do.
Yeah, and I think those are such important conversations and things to think about when you're looking at where you're going to integrate AI, what you're going to automate, what tasks you're going to replace. And there's a lot of questions you need to ask besides how much time is this going to save? You need to look at, are these tasks that create more opportunity for human engagement? Are these tasks that people enjoy doing? Maybe we don't need to replace this and automate this. Maybe there's other, better ways that we can use this technology that will actually create more opportunities for human engagement. You see this a lot with, institutions that start integrating chatbots into their, student success programs because they're not spending all their time answering all of those common questions. Chatbots are handling those and then passing people off to humans to handle the more complicated, more relational focused questions. So I think there's a ton of things to consider when you're looking at integrating.
Yeah, I want to call out something that you just said there, the idea of looking for the things that humans don't necessarily want to do, the things that are tedious, the less fun parts of their job. Starting with those first is so important because, as I've heard you say, it's really about change management more than about technology. And change management is really about the human side of things. And so looking for things that, opportunities to integrate AI that makes people's jobs and lives happier, I think is definitely the way to start.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best ways to get somebody on board is to provide them with a tool that saves them time or that takes repetitive, monotonous tasks off of their plate. And they're like, oh, wow, this actually can help without risking, data or data breaches or privacy breaches. So.
Right.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Forsyth Technical Community College was juggling siloed systems, fragmented data pipelines, and manual workflows across marketing, admissions, and CRM operations. Then they deployed Bolt Agents, Element 451's AI workforce platform. The result? Those agents handled over 80% of student inquiries, independently saving 183,060 human minutes and cutting call volumes by 14% within just 1 week of rollout. Curious what your AI teammates could look like? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. What advice do you have for institutions that haven't started exploring AI or really looking into how to start integrating into their workflows?
Start exploring now if you haven't. As the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. I would say your faculty, staff, and students are all using AI already. I would also say at the same time, don't feel like you're too far behind the curve. I was in a higher ed webinar earlier this week that talked about AI usage, and 62% of the respondents in that poll said that their institution is still in the learning and exploring phase, that they haven't yet made a formal plan or started implementing AI at an institutional level. And that was a small sample size, of course, but that reminds me that in many ways, we're still at the very beginning of the AI transformation.
Yeah, and especially I think higher ed is tends to be a little slower to adopt to new things or to make, changes to the way that we've always done things. And that's one of the biggest challenges with AI is, and you can do a lot with, tools just looking to automate your existing workflows and change your existing processes to make them more efficient. But the true power of these tools comes when you start thinking about collaborating with them and working together with them to change the way that you actually do your work.
Exactly. And I just to follow up on that point, I think the institutions want to try to design for like a changing environment. Like AI is not just another tool inside of a stable system, right? Like you have a stable system, you get a new tool, and then you're using that tool within this existing environment. AI is different in that it's changing the system itself. It's going to be changing the environment or the global context in which we operate. And so as we adopt AI, sort of the inputs and outputs to our work are shifting. Here's an example, so with SEO, when ChatGPT first came out, early on, it was a great thing to ask ChatGPT, how AI could be used or to ask it to improve your SEO, right? And that's useful. And I think it's still useful. But the environment around SEO is also being changed by AI, right? And so with, this idea of zero-click search results and the AI overviews that Google has rolled out, the answer engines like Perplexity, just integrating search into ChatGPT, we'll be redefining SEO maybe towards, what people are calling GEO or generative engine optimization or some other sort of answer engine focused model. I saw a recent survey that Bain and Company did, and this was, I believe, in 2025. They said about 80% of consumers are now relying on zero-click answers in 40% of their searches. And it's reducing organic web traffic by an estimated 15 to 25%, at least for those folks. And so it makes you wonder, are people even going to visit websites or search the web in a traditional sense, in the way that we might think of searching the web now? In another 10 years, is that still going to be a thing that people do?
Yeah, I started off doing SEO in 1996, and I have seen lots of changes in that field. I think really now we're migrating to search everywhere optimization instead of search engine optimization, because you really have to have your content distributed. Distribution is discoverability with AI. Having third parties talk about you is also just as critical. Working with other groups, collaborating with other groups, doing PR, supplying your information in a way that makes it relevant for their audiences so that they will put that up on their sites. It's going to really change the landscape, but people are still searching. They are going to be out there looking for information. You just have to figure out how to get that in front of them.
Right.
What are some of the more interesting use cases of AI that you've seen in higher ed?
So despite, working in marketing and communications and being sort of a technologist, the use cases that really resonate with me are the ones that are tied more directly to student success, like personalized tutoring. And I think it's because helping students improve their lives is really what drew me and what I think draws a lot of people to work in higher education. One thing I read about recently is that Morehouse College has introduced these, what they call virtual teaching assistants, and they're extremely customized based on each specific professor's direction, They train it on that professor's expertise, course notes, and lectures. Here's what's interesting is that students can interact with them verbally as 3D avatars rather than sort of the traditional chatbot text-based interface. Something similar but different. Georgia State University ran a pilot this past year where they had non-generative AI chatbots, but they had these chatbots proactively communicate with students about things like study tips, reminders about their homework. And they found that 82% of the students in this pilot program responded positively and actually wanted to use them in other courses. And then they also found that the students in the pilot were 5 to 6% more likely to get a grade of B or higher than the control group.
I think, there are so many opportunities for institutions. Like, I think the first institution that starts providing AI personal assistance to their new incoming students, I think is going to have a huge leg up, because that would be something that could help you find your way around campus by using the camera on your phone, or it could suggest different clubs or events that are going on that day that are interesting to you, along with providing personal tutoring for, I just wanted to check in and see what you thought about the class today. And here were some points that were brought. I think there's a ton of opportunities there, as long as we stay focused on the fact that these should encourage critical thinking and should encourage teamwork and camaraderie building and those sorts of things. But I think we're going to start seeing more implementations like that as we're moving forward.
Right.
We know that higher ed needs to start figuring out how to adapt, how to change our thought patterns as we start integrating AI. What do you think that marketers and admissions and alumni professionals can start doing to prepare for how these tools are going to impact their jobs?
Keep moving, and keep moving. There was a great analogy that really resonated with me that I heard recently. This was in a talk given by Douglas Eck from the Google DeepMind team. And he sort of talked about when big technological shifts happen, they're sort of like an avalanche. Say an avalanche happens on a mountain on a Wednesday afternoon. Well, it doesn't impact the people that were on the mountain on Tuesday, the day before, and it doesn't impact the people on Thursday. The people that are there the day after are probably going to be fine, although the landscape is going to look quite different. But the people who are on the mountain when the avalanche happens are those of us that are in mid-career right now. So we're in the avalanche. And the survival technique for being caught in an avalanche is to keep moving and don't get stuck. And what happens is if you stop and get stuck, then the snow settles around you like concrete. Keep moving, adapt to the changing circumstances, stay flexible, and just don't get stuck.
It's great advice. And I love that analogy, because it is so appropriate to, kind of the fear that we're feeling and the uncertainty, like, where are we going to end up? Where is this going to take us? And we're just trying to stay on top, stay afloat, figure out what's going on until we can, until things start to settle a little bit, or until we find, a way to get on a solid path.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about that, where do you see generative AI going in the next few years?
I think that we've seen a lot of, the trends that are happening right now. I think that those are going to continue to play out over the next 1 or 2 years. I don't know that we'll get radical changes. That's probably, I should knock on wood, but I do think that the trends that we're seeing right now are going to continue, but they will change the nature of how we work and how AI works in the next 1 to 2 years. So a couple of examples would be like reasoning models and agentic style workflows are going to become the default. I would say they're almost becoming the default right now. AIs will have more access to more tools. Again, that's something that's happening this year, but I think it's going to continue even further. For example, just in the last couple of weeks, Anthropic, maybe it was even just in the last week, Anthropic announced that Claude can create Excel spreadsheets, can create PowerPoint decks, can create documents, also the mainstreaming of multimodal assistants, right? We've had multimodal AI for about a year now, but and these have been demoed, but like an assistant that can look at your screen and look at what you're doing on your screen, or can look through your camera and see what you're looking at, and can help you with things in real time. And, like I said, these things exist now, but they're not necessarily mainstream yet.
Yeah, I think there's so many capabilities to these tools that we just haven't had enough time to really explore to find good use cases for. You see these new features being launched and being talked about, and you're like, oh, that's great. But until you can figure out where to integrate that into your processes in a way that is like strategic and provides ROI, if you just go in and start playing with things, that's great. You're learning, but you're wasting your time, because if you're not going to be able to integrate that into your processes to be more efficient or more effective, then you need a certain amount of exploration. You need to be able to have the freedom to fail, because we are going to fail a lot with these tools, and things are not going to work out the way we wanted to. But when you find something that does work, it's just incredible the amount of time you can save and the change that you can see in the way you do your work. One of the questions I always finish up with is, what specific use cases of AI are most helpful for you, either personally or professionally?
Yeah, right now I really have to go with agentic coding assistants. That is the most helpful for me. So we're in the middle of a website brand refresh right now, and I am currently, like today, as we speak, producing all the new HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all of the front end code based on our designs that we've had produced. And Claude Code is made probably 5 times faster to produce what I need to. There's still a lot of manual work, and I am still writing a fair portion of the code myself, definitely checking it all myself, but Claude does make things so much faster. For example, I can say, like, I'm using these particular CSS styles, and can you go and find those for me? And it'll almost instantly pull up like 5 different places in the code across, 4 or 5 different files. And then I can say, okay, so give me a suggestion about how to combine these together. Another example, I can say, like, I copied this component over from our old theme, and it relies on Bootstrap 4. And so what do I need to change to make it compatible with Bootstrap 5? And it'll tell me. So it's not doing the work for me, but I can spend 10 minutes with Claude Code and get 45 minutes worth of work done. At least what used to take me 45 minutes, which is pretty great.
Yeah. And it's so critical. People worry about, AI taking your jobs, and there absolutely will be some jobs that may be entirely replaced, but you still need a human to know what the right input is and what the right questions are to ask to get the tools moving forward. And then you have to have the industry expertise or the knowledge to be able to look at the output and judge whether or not it's accurate and high quality. And, I think it's so critical to remember that, we've seen a lot of businesses that have just laid off lots of people and replaced them with AI, and then discovered fairly shortly that AI can't do all of the things that you need humans to do. So, but it is incredible how it can augment your current expertise and knowledge.
Right. Like, I think of it as sort of being able to move up an abstraction layer, right, to a higher level of strategic thinking. So back in the day with me, and maybe with you too, since you said you have a background in web development, it used to be that just knowing HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript was enough to build a career on. I know people in the past have been able to get by on being an Excel whiz, or by being a Google Analytics guru, or knowing Photoshop inside and out. And those are all, still valuable skills. But those are the sort of like knowing the how to, sort of the answer to how to, right? But those type of tool use skills, I think, are, one day maybe not going to be needed at all. And so moving from the sort of like, how do I do this, to the question of like, what should we be doing and why should we be doing it, is where I think, the human work is going to be more in the future, rather than the tool use skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the creative and strategic side are going to have to be driven by humans to provide direction to the AI tools. So it's
Yeah.
great. Well, Mark, I can't thank you enough for joining us on the show. If our audience wants to stay in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Not sure what my LinkedIn handle is off the top of my head, but you will find me there. If you're connected with Brian on LinkedIn, we're connected. So I'll probably show up as a second degree connection.
You are the Mark Lee.
Okay, that's where to find me. I'm always open to chat with people, especially people in higher ed. That's one of the things that's amazing about, being in higher ed is it feels more like a community than an industry. And so, my work email is mlee or mark.lee@coloradocollege.edu. And you can feel free to reach out to me there if you want to chat or anything about AI. I always love to meet new friends and talk with people in higher education.
Excellent. Well, can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your time and insights with us. This has been great.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for all that you do for the community.
Mark's insights about AI as a system-changing force rather than just another tool offers a crucial perspective for higher education leaders. I loved his avalanche metaphor because it really captures the reality that many of us face. We're not preparing for future change. We're navigating transformation that's happening around us right now. The shift from how to do something to what should we be doing and why represents a fundamental change in how we think about professional skills and career development. As AI handles more of the tactical execution, human value increasingly lies in strategic thinking, creative problem solving, and understanding the broader context of our work. Mark's background in algorithmic arts and early AI experimentation reminds us that this technology isn't entirely new. It's an acceleration and democratization of capabilities that have been emerging for years. His cautionary perspective, informed by watching the evolution of the web and social media, provides important context for approaching AI adoption thoughtfully rather than reactively. The student success examples from Morehouse College and Georgia State University demonstrate AI's potential to enhance rather than replace human connection in education. As we navigate this transformation, keeping student outcomes at the center of our AI integration decisions helps ensure that we're using these tools to strengthen rather than diminish the human elements that make higher education valuable. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating. Thanks for listening to AI for You. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.